I'm amped for this. I've really enjoyed the week of hype. There's been a lot of good trash talk between John Jones and Quentin Rampage Jackson, and I kind of think Rampage on the surface has won the battle because he's been the more smooth talker with the better lines. But, beneath the surface, has there been a winner?
I think John Jones has held his own, Steve. I think he's come up with some pretty good lines that you have to give him credit for. He started the week, and I used this in my story on Rampage Jackson. It was Friday on Yahoo Sports, and I talked about his comments from Jimmy Kimmel where he said it's going to be Spider-Man versus Frankenstein. And I thought that was a really apt comparison. And when you look at it, it's something that, I know it was supposed to be a joke, but, there was some truth to it, and he spoke a little bit of truth, and it's something that Jackson has to overcome.
How does he overcome it? Because to me, fight style, I think he needs to exert, a possible, I'm not saying he has a power edge, but, close space, eliminate the length, take away the height advantage and grind Jones at times on the cage and try to dirty box, but he just doesn't seem to be willing to do that in previous matches.
Yeah, I think the difference with Rampage in the past has been that, he's fallen in love with the right hand. All he does is, try to set up the right hand, and he hasn't been in condition to do anything else. And, just to look at him in some of the fights, you see him with the fleshy face and kind of, and he really has to dump a lot of weight before the weigh-in. I really believe that the time he spent at Muscle Farm in Denver getting ready for this fight, training the entire 2+ months at altitude, is going to make a difference. Now, I'm not saying he's going to win the fight, but I think we're going to see a different Rampage. And as I mentioned in my column, maybe it's going to be a light-footed Frankenstein. I don't think he's going to be a different style of fighter. I don't think you're going to all of a sudden see him going for submission after submission. He's still going to use that right hand. But I think that, he'll be able to execute a lot better and move a lot more. I think when Jones called him Rampage, Frankenstein, Steve, I think the thing was, he's a slow-moving, kind of robotic-type guy. That was really what Rampage has become. That's what he was against Rashad. That's what he was against Matt Hamill. I think you'll see a little bit different Quentin Jackson in the cage on Saturday night.
That said, though, I don't think people realize what they're dealing with in terms of that length and the kicks and the ability to be on the move and athletic like Jones is.
Yeah, I think that, we're talking the future of the sport here. I think these are going to be the kind of guys that ultimately take over, and Jones has given us a sneak preview into, what to expect. A guy with an 84-inch reach, he's 6'4", still makes that 205-pound weight class. He just has so many things going for him. And while I don't think that, there was discussion about power, I don't think Jones is overly powerful. But the thing is that he's such an accurate puncher, and he has so many weapons. He hits you with so many different things. The elbows are lethal, but, you're liable to get hit from him by his fist, by his elbow, by his knee, by his foot. You just never know. He has so many different tricks, and, he's so quick and such an accurate puncher that I think it presents problems for everybody.
He seems to have a demeanor about him, too. Like, I thought there, like I said, during the pre-fight talk, maybe he was a little shaken, stumbling and babbling a little bit, but there is this underlying confidence all the time. So any thought that, like, hey, he's going to get in the cage and be all, fired up and he'll be stressed mentally, I don't even know if I can sell that one either, because he's usually, when he gets in the cage, he's cool as a cucumber.
Yeah, and I think that comes from the great wrestling that he has. There's been nobody that he hasn't been able to control with wrestling. So if he gets into a bad situation in a fight, which he's rarely been in, but if he does, he goes back and relies on his wrestling, and that's something that he's done since he was a young kid, and he has tremendous wrestling because of that. And I think the second thing is what I alluded to before, Steve, is because of that length, it allows him to control a lot of stuff. If he wants to stay on the outside, if he's not so sure, he's got an 84-inch reach. That is massive. That is really, really big. That's bigger than some of the Klitschko brothers. So, when you think about that, that allows him the comfort to say, okay, I'm not sure right now what I want to do, so I just want to stay out here and kind of peck away and, maybe flick some jabs and flick some kicks before I think of what my next move is. It allows him confidence to, kind of think in the cage.
Kevin Iole on with us here on the Jewelers of Las Vegas MMA Insiders show on ESPN Radio 1100, 98.9 FM. So picks-wise, Jones, massive favorite. What would you do with the line here? He's minus 600. Rampage coming back at plus 400. Is it a stay away? Do you roll the dog money? What do you do?
I think it's a stay away, Steve, and I'll tell you why. Because Rampage just has not performed at the high level that I would expect a guy that was a former unified champion. This is the only guy that held the Pride and UFC belts at the same time. When he beat Dan Henderson in 2007, he did that. And, you would expect that guy to perform a little better. But, look at the fight he had coming off Matt Hamill. We saw Matt Hamill get destroyed the next time out after losing a close fight to Rampage. He gets destroyed by Alexander Gustafsson. Rashad Evans really handled Rampage fairly well. He won a split decision over Machida. He has not been performing like the guy that you think. And Jones has shown no vulnerability to this point. He hasn't been hit on the chin, but, instead of being a question mark about him, that's a credit. You don't want to get hit on the chin. And, of course, if Rampage catches him, I would say, he has a good chance to knock him out, and maybe it's worth plus 400. But I just think, Steve, that this is a stay away because Rampage hasn't been catching guys his own size on the chin, let alone someone who's several inches taller and has a reach of about almost a foot bigger.
Diego Sanchez is out. Matt Hughes goes in. Or check that. Matt Hughes is still there, but Josh Koscheck goes in, so we get a matchup that I know Koscheck wanted for a long time. Do you buy the stuff from Koscheck that Hughes was ducking him over the years?
No, I don't. I think Matt Hughes, Matt has got a little different personality, and he doesn't get into the game that a lot of these guys like to play, and he's not into the calling out and everything else. When Matt Hughes isn't fighting, he's not paying attention to what's going on in the world of the UFC and the world of MMA. If he's not cornering somebody or if he doesn't have his own fight, he's doing something else and doesn't pay attention to it. Matt Hughes has been a guy, he said this to me, Lorenzo Fertitta has said this to me, Dana White has said this to me, they've all said it repeatedly. You never have a problem with Matt Hughes and who he wants to fight. You just go to Matt Hughes and say, hey, we got you fighting, whether it's King Kong, Frankenstein, Spider-Man, whoever it is, he says yes. And so just tell me when and where. So I don't think at all that he was ducking Koscheck or anybody from AKA.
What does he have left in the tank?
Well, that's the question. I thought after UFC 85 over in London, and I actually called for his retirement then, and I'll stand by that. I think that would have been a great time for him to go out. He's won some fights subsequently, but he hasn't beaten the elite guys. So, BJ knocked him out last year. So, he's had some wins, and he's had some wins over guys, you would have expected him to beat. I would have expected him to beat Matt Serra, as an example. But, I think Matt is, kind of coming to the end. I think he's starting to realize that he's still a formidable force because that's how good he was when he was in his prime. So he's still a factor, but I just don't think that he's the same guy that he once was.
What about this matchup? Tough matchup for a guy who has to rely on power and wrestling. I don't know that he's going to get Koscheck down, or maybe he will. Koscheck has been caught in some fights against guys maybe he expected to have an edge over wrestling-wise and been dumped on his head. Will that happen?
Yeah, I think it could happen, but I don't think it will. I would be much more confident of Koscheck's chances if he had more than 3 weeks to game plan for Matt Hughes. He's had 3 weeks, he was working with other guys, so he's in condition. But, there's being in condition, there's being in fight condition, knowing that you're going to be the one out there fighting. So I like Koscheck. I would take Koscheck in the fight. But having said that, I'm a little wary only because, he's only had 3 weeks, a little bit less than 3 weeks, actually, to kind of, think about Matt Hughes' game plan, figure out what he wants to do. And Josh, as you know, can get a little bit reckless and make a crazy move once in a while. And, if he does that, Hughes is still dangerous enough to finish him.
That's a good point. And Koscheck is minus 600, so I would caution people on that one. He may win, and he may win easily, but it is a fight. Hughes is still damn good, and the gloves are small, so you never know. Heavyweights. You got Travis Brown and Rob Broughton. How high are you on Travis Brown?
I actually like Travis Brown. The fact that he didn't just totally defeat Czech Congo, he fought to a draw. I'm not as high on Congo as some people are. And so that, that gets me a little bit. But that was a striker versus striker match. So I think Travis Brown is pretty good. I think he's a developing fighter. And I think he's a guy that, could be a factor. So I definitely like Brown to win this fight.
I'm intrigued by Diaz and Gomi, and Diaz is about a 3-1 favorite. Gomi, he hasn't been destroyed in these fights. He's had some gas tank issues. He gets a little sloppy. He's taken down, and I know Diaz can take him down. But on the other side, Nate does like to throw, and if you stand there with Gomi long enough, you may get popped. So what do you think?
This is a tough fight to call. I end up, I go with Diaz, and I think ultimately I would end up laying the money and betting Nate Diaz in this fight. But, Gomi is a hard guy to figure out because we've seen him, look terrible since he's come to the UFC, and we've also seen him look pretty good. So, but I think Nate Diaz is a pretty consistent guy, and I think this is a better weight for him than 170. I think he can beat some guys at 170, but I think strength becomes a factor there, and, he's just not big enough to handle the strong guys at 170, but at 155, I think it's a really good weight for him. And, he's got the length similar to what John Jones has at light heavyweight. At lightweight, Nathan Diaz, is a long, lanky guy with long arms, long legs. And I think that, he gives himself some advantages. Obviously, he's a tough kid, and he's proven to have a really, really good chin. And, his jiu-jitsu is sick, so he can, if he gets knocked down, I think he can fight from the bottom. I think Nate will win this fight.
Jones, Rampage. Are you buying into this, the momentum here at all? You're getting a lot. I know Bisping's not the most objective guy, but no. Evan said today that now he likes Rampage. Well, I think it's more of a mental ploy, but it's minus 550, minus 600, coming back anywhere from plus 375 to 450.
One thing you'll see on this card, there's really not a lot of close spreads. It's all huge favorites in all the fights on the main card. If you pick the fight, I say John Jones is way too good, way too talented, way too explosive. But at this price, there is no chance you can bet on John Jones. If you make a bet on this fight, it's Quentin Jackson or nothing. We'll see what Jones's chin is like. If Rampage lands one shot, will Jones go down? We don't know. We haven't seen him hit. So you got to take that shot with this much value on an experienced guy who's been a title holder in the past.
I think you said it earlier. Matt Hughes is the bet on the Koscheck fight. Yeah. Koscheck at 470 to 550 is insane.
Yeah, that's crazy. I don't get this at all. Hughes has too many ways to win fights to be this big of a dog against Koscheck, who's on short notice, a short camp, coming off an injury that we don't know how it's going to react in the cage. I say it's definitely Hughes or nothing in an underdog spot here, too.
Ben Rothwell, Mark Hunt. 340, Rothwell's favorite against Hunt. Now the risk here is that Rothwell can gas out. If it goes long, the longer that Mark Hunt has a chance to punch you, he's got a chance to knock you out.
Mark Hunt could be the equivalent of Ronnie from Jersey Shore. One shot, bro. That's all he takes. He can get you with one. You can be done. And again, we analyze fights differently here in Vegas than we do other places because you can't just say who's going to win. You have to take the odds into consideration. And you're telling me that he doesn't have more than it's almost 4 to 1 now, right?
Yeah.
You're telling me he doesn't have that much chance to land one punch on Rothwell. Rothwell is good enough to be laying this kind of price? That's crazy.
All right, real quick. Diaz and Gomi. You buying the dog on this one? Diaz 270. Favorite.
I'm kind of surprised by how big the number is here, but we have seen Gomi, struggle quite a bit, except against Tyson Griffin, his UFC fights. I think Diaz wins this fight, but again, a little bit too high. If you're going to bet a favorite, maybe Diaz is the way to go. It's low enough that you can take a shot at him, but I think Diaz wins the fight. But again, maybe too much value with Gomi's side here. He can land a shot too, just like we saw Tyson Griffin just overwhelmed by his striking.
Beyond those, did you have one fight that you like? Because I'll give you mine. Tim Boach, I think, is going to steamroll Nick Ring. He's minus 145. I'll do it.
Nick Ring looks so good against James Head, though.
Oh, God. Anything else you like? I will say Tony Ferguson, the tough champion, way too big at 350.
That was actually
against Aaron Riley.
That was actually when I was talking last night about to some people that bet it. I said that's a very good value to go against him there.
All right.
I also think Cole Escovedo is probably going to lose as well.
And he's against Mizugaki. Yeah, Mizugaki is minus 200.
Yeah, I think Mizugaki is pretty good value at only minus 200. Man.
Thanks to Bjorn Rebney from Bellator and their PR people, Joe Fernandez and Anthony helping us out there. Fine folks at UFC for setting up and tracking down Michael Bisping. Michael was very good tonight. Kevin Iole from Denver. Reynolds down here at PT's. Thanks to Adam for filling in on short notice. Good job back in our Findlay Toyota studios by Clay Baker. Want to thank, again, the Jewelers of Las Vegas, are our title sponsor here on the Jewelers of Las Vegas MMA Insider Show. It's Nevada's most trusted jeweler for over 30 years at jewelers.com. 382-1234, and tomorrow night, this is the spot to be. UFC 135, awesome pay-per-view, great, heated title fight between John Jones and Quentin Rampage Jackson. It's 2:15 in South Buffalo. Come on out to PT's. Watch the fights. We'll be talking about them next week when we see you again on Friday.